Hello, Janice. How are you? Welcome to the Fluent Reads Growth Series.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Mark, for inviting me here today. And yeah, I'm fine. How about you?
I'm doing great, great, great. Excited to dive into these topics related to the growth series.
Same here.
Okay, so before we start, how would you like to introduce yourself to the Fluent Reads community?
Yeah, I'm Yanis. I was born in Germany. I live in Greece, and I'm a team and leadership coach.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, all right, very good. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? The team leadership
yeah,
coach.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. My background actually is like mostly in engineering part. So I studied computer engineering, informatics. I did a master in artificial intelligence. I've been working for almost 7 years, the last 7 years as a data scientist, and the last years as a leader. And I found a lot of energy from my one-ones with my team as a leader. I think
Mm-hmm.
this is something that every leader and every founder should do with their teams.
Okay.
And yeah, I got a lot of energy because they realized that it's something like really important for them. They transformed themselves. They became the best version of themselves, and I decided to enhance this influence with my team. And I got let's say yeah, actually I went to a coaching school a year ago, so I learned about more about coaching, how to coach more effectively my team, every person individually. And 4 months ago, I started with my personal company, Post Heroic Leadership, which is focused in empowering founders to lead themselves and their teams more effectively with the power of the coach tech. The coach tech is a combination of, I combined my passion with technology, AI, and coaching. So this is a combination. This is the coach tech.
Okay, perfect, perfect. And congratulations on your new endeavor with your company. That's a great I like that. I like those professional mixes of like, engineering, you're going to AI, but now you value or you appreciate the impact of coaching. And now you're putting it together and you created something out of that. So that's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's like, getting all the knowledge that you have from something with your passion, from the other hand, combine them together and build something, interesting for you and for your audience at the same time. So
Exactly.
yeah, I think this is the mission that every person should have to find, an obsession using the past knowledge.
Exactly. It's also it's important. I see exactly what you mean because sometimes we can be very like driven like on in society like on path, meaning like, okay, study this in order to do this, and this is all you need to think about. And we totally need to change that because sometimes it's what do you connect to? What are you interested in? And there is a period of your life where there's maybe more time for exploration of that. Maybe like, for example, you could say, oh, your 20s from because you're studying at the university or you're trying different things, but eventually, when you connect and try different things, whether it's through your curiosity or professionally working in something, eventually you can get those, you can cultivate those aha moments and say, okay, I'm
Yeah,
going to put this together with this and this. And we sometimes we need to promote this more. We don't realize how we're strategically creating our own superpower. Because when you mix those together, you say,
yeah,
wow, like no one's able to do, no one actually has this interesting combination here. And now I
yeah,
can create something from that. So I'm glad, like before even starting, you mentioned that because I totally agree with that.
yeah, yeah. Our lives are not written in stones. So it's not about growing up, studying, working, growing, family, retiring, enjoying the
Hmm.
life. Yeah, it's not like written in stone. And I really admire people who decide to make a career change,
Hmm.
especially after 30s or 40s or even 50s, 60s. I love those people because they are they are out of their comfort zone and just enjoy, find they have found their passion and enjoy their
Yeah.
lives, whatever
Yes.
that means. Even yeah, if they fail or succeed, yeah, it doesn't really matter. They did something, even at their 60s. It doesn't matter.
Yes. 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 No, it's extremely useful in that way. Okay, so before we get started, let's tell us a little bit about your English learning journey. How did you get to where you are now?
Oh yeah, interesting question because I was not a big fan of learning new languages when I was a kid. I'm not a big fan now. So yeah, I still remember my parents were pushing me around. Let's say, go and take this paper with English. English like number one language in the world. And I said, yeah, I have to do. This is written in stone again. So I have to go. I failed twice, to be honest. So I don't have any certification in English, to be honest with you. I learned a lot of English during my master degree because I had to read a lot of papers, researches, uh, everything,
Hmm.
especially in AI. In AI field, everything is written in English, of course. And I enhanced my knowledge while talking mostly in my internship when I was working. And I think, yeah, I grew up as an English learner there. So reading and speaking almost every day because we were, let's say, a multicultural company and I had to speak. I still remember myself in the first meetings, I was taking some notes just to be more, familiar with what I had to say. So I was writing everything, let's say every single word in the beginning because I was not comfortable. I had no confidence about my English language levels, skills. But every day I was become better and better and better. And here I am. Of course, I'm not a native speaker, but yeah, that's my journey.
Great, great. And I'm glad you shared that because sometimes we get too focused on the formal learning approach of certifications, validation, and things, whatever. And you've taken a unique approach. And I actually promote this in many ways where you just simply follow your curiosity, connect it to what you need and what you want. And from what I'm hearing from you is through your own personal journey, through your exploration, whether it's with artificial intelligence or things, whatever, you are able to put those pieces together, and that's why we're able to see what we have here today, and your ability to communicate well in the English language. And I think that needs to be promoted more because, and I understand the language learning ecosystem. It is a business, or things, whatever, and sometimes, but what I realize sometimes people the community when you have a lack of knowledge of how this process goes, you automatically focus on the formalized method of like, okay, so what room do I need to go to, what course do I need to take, instead
Yeah,
of thinking, okay, how do I need to explore? I many times I say, okay, if you like reading, fine. If you like listening to podcasts, fine. If you like watching YouTube videos, any way you can interact with the language, just go down that path, and the rest will come. Actively listen to, actively read, maybe write, take notes about it. But eventually, it's a gradual process, and I think that's really important to promote that alternative, what you're doing. And what I'm saying is because you speak well, is that your professional, although your professional training, which is formal because you did a master's, etc., it helped facilitate your informal growth and improving your English.
yeah, of course. Yeah. It was a great spark, a great trigger. Both my studies and of course my internship and my first job. I was lucky, I think, for yeah, that I went in a multicultural company and I had to speak English every day. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it was yeah because that was the only way to learn how to communicate effectively. Because yeah, as you said, the certification is almost nothing if you don't know how to speak, how to communicate, or how to write. How to listen. A certification is just a proof of concept.
exactly, 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 exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's actually it can actually have the negative effect because sometimes so in our culture we do focus a lot on titles like what are the initials after your name, what certification that you have, but sometimes that distracts us from like what's really there. And in my case, in my experience working, whether it's with professionals, with academics or whatever, some of the people that have the best language and communication skills have zero certification. And
Mm.
there's zero certification. There's no title. There's no certificate. You just have what you're in front of you. You just have essentially what's in front of you, and their ability to basically cultivate that skill through life experiences and interactions.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's like, for example, I do have two certification in German language, and the only thing that I remember and I can say it's like ich bin in Deutschland geboren, which is like, yeah, I was born in Germany, and yeah, of course I can understand a lot of things because I was born there and I was living there for quite long. But I cannot speak because
Hmm.
I don't speak daily in a daily basis. I don't watch movies in German. You know, it's like build a daily habit around what you want to learn. Yeah, it, this is the way to be better, I think.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. Okay, so we're gonna transition into our topics for the growth series today.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we start, typically the most common term is, like soft skills. Some people don't like this term. They prefer to use human skills, power skills, whatever you want.
Hmm.
We're focusing on growth skills because we're going to talk about different topics, but also kind of these interpersonal skills that are necessary, not only as a founder working in a startup, but as a human being in general. Why do you think these skills in general, are cultivating these skills? Why are they important in your opinion?
Um, yeah, I really like a quote. Let's say hard skills get you hired, and soft skills get you promoted. I think it's really important to cultivate your soft skills. I think without them, you will be your whole life the same person, whatever that means. If it's like professionally or personal growth, you know. So cultivating and enhancing your soft skills, I think, is really mandatory to go to the next level.
Okay.
So personally, I tend to distinguish people in the workplace like the generalist and the specialist.
Hmm.
And I love both because both have really important roles inside the company. Specialists are really important to make you grow faster.
Hmm.
Generalists are really important to make you, let's say, be more diverse inside uh, in a lot of fields. Let's say, might be, let's say, marketing, sales, whatever. So I think the former, they don't have a lot of soft skills, and that's fine. That's completely fine because they are crazy in technicals. They are super crazy, and I love them. And but the latter is like the generalist. They have, let's say, really high soft skills. They know how to communicate, how to collaborate, how to, let's say, active listening, to delegate work, so everything. So, in my opinion, the soft skills are something that should be cultivated, let's say, uh, from when you are an intern or something. Yeah, from the beginning of your career, even at school, if that's
Okay.
possible.
Yes. I agree with you as early as possible. It's we have like math class, history, etc. We have to have how to interact as a human,
Mhm.
what I mean, with yourself and with others. So this is like
Exactly. Yeah.
as a class, exactly. All right, so we're gonna go into these growth topics. I think the most adequate one to start off with is one that's related to you, is coaching. Uh, we're gonna explore these topics through a combination of examples, anecdotes, your own personal experience, or from others. But we're the Fluent Reads community. We are. working to empower, founders at different stages in order to elevate them and optimize them, but also recognizing the importance of community. Like it takes a village, it takes a community of people, whether it's mentors, coaches, teachers, etc., in order to reach that ideal state. Although you never really reach there, it's important. It's not important to actually reach. It's just to enjoy that journey that's there. So
Mhm.
our first topic we're going to start with is coaching. So how would you like to 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 take a deep dive into this one?
Yeah. Coaching for me it's a journey. It's transformation. So it's a mutual responsibility for both for coach and the coachee or the team. So it's like an amazing way to find your own solutions for your own problems. So it's totally different than because people it's really easy to confuse coaching, mentoring, consulting, advising, everything together, and it's totally acceptable. Of course, I didn't know the differences, and with coaching, coaching needs time, but it's so powerful because you are going to find your own solutions. I'm not going to tell you do Mark, do X and Y, and you will see results. But after some time, you're going to say me, something, Yanis, X and Y don't work for me. And I said, oh, okay, I didn't know it. And you have spent a lot of time in between to try, push yourself and stress yourself to act with X and Y. So yeah, with coaching, you're going to find your own solutions. You're going to act as you want to act. You're going to behave as you want to behave. And this is the beauty of that.
Great. I love the way you explained that. It is I mean, we're on a journey in all aspects or whatever, but specifically talking about journey and in relation to coaching, it is important. And to see that, I imagine it can be rewarding to see that transformation. And sometimes it can be quite confusing when you're thinking about, okay, do I need consulting? Do I need coaching? Do I need teaching? Do I need mentorship or things,
Yeah.
whatever? It's like all of these terms. But yeah, I think you simplified and explained it well of like this journey and how you're facilitating this in some way, but you're not actually actively doing it for them or whatever. It's increasing their own awareness. And then once they have maybe a blind spot of some sort or whatever, you're kind of like, okay, we probably need to navigate in this direction or something like that. So I think that's incredibly useful.
Yeah, totally,
Okay.
totally.
Why do you think why is coaching essential for founders, whether it's any stage, or if we want to focus on the early stages or later, what is the value that's added here?
I'm going to talk for both for two perspectives. The first one is
Okay.
like to apply team coaching to your team and to apply one-on-one coaching to yourself as a founder. So the team coaching is really important because you're going to increase the chemistry of the team. You're going to bond the team together. They are going to find their own actions because a team is just like a soul. It's not like 10 people individual speaking that just jump them inside the room and let them work. Yeah, it's not like that. They have a voice, they have their own soul, their own voice, their own way to act and react to something. So yeah, and I really believe that if you want to have a profitable company, because profitability in startup companies is really important. I've been working in startup companies my whole career because I love them. And profitability is like super important. In order to
Yeah.
be profitable, you should have a high performance team. In order to have a high performance team, you should apply coaching. Or if you don't know coaching, it's fine. You should train them with some way or another. That has to be courses, trainings, mentorings, consultings, invest to your team so they are going to invest back to you. So the second one is the individual speaking. So no one is born to be a founder, I think. No one is born to be a leader. And you should accept that you don't know everything, but you have to know more than in your previous position, of course, as founder. You have more responsibilities, you have more stress, you are more busy, whatever it means to you, you know. And I think if you apply coaching, you will be more ready to get inside his position. You will be more ready, less stressed, busy with a good way, because it's like, I'm busy, okay, and what has it mean to you? Okay, I'm busy. Yeah, and in general, you're going to lead yourself, to apply self leadership, as I call it, and team leadership with a better way, more efficient way, and you'll be more, let's say, people driven rather than project driven.
Okay, great, great. This is a nice segue, our transition to the next topic, which is company culture.
Okay. Yeah, I think I would say be diverse, build a trust inside your team. The quote "lead by example" by in leadership is not like another quote that we love to write on posts, social media or something. It's like it's a reality. It's really important to show trust, to show empathy, to show motivation in order to get them back. So build a culture, or let's say, be the leader you wish you had when your
Mhm.
career started.
Okay.
Again, it's not, yeah, it's not again a quote. You started
Yeah.
your career, you knew nothing, and someone, threw you inside the sea without nothing, and he said, "Swim." Oh, you want the same? Yeah,
Yes. 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 Yeah. Okay. How is it? It can be quite. We've established, like, in many cases, founders, they can be quite young. You may start a company with a friend or etc. Whatever. So there's a high learning curve, whether you need to learn about finance, marketing, talking to users, etc. How do you approach maybe more of a systematic way of from the inception of this company culture when you're getting your first team members, or even if you're at the later stage where we're already 50 people, but we haven't really focused on this company culture thing? So could you give us maybe a little perspective on how you would uh, advise or make some suggestions on that side?
yeah, yeah. Um, I would say never hire someone because you like him or her. Just hire someone because this person fits to your culture, to your way of thinking. Not your way of thinking, but your team's way of thinking. So you don't really to grow fast, or to measure success based on how much people you have, or your capacity of your team. For me, the baby steps in the beginning of a startup is fine. Just try to be, let's say, transparent with your team, be open. And for me, transparency means, just share everything in public.
Mm. Mm.
All the obstacles, all the failures, all the successes, everything. Win together and lose together.
Yeah.
This is the culture that you have to build. It's totally amazing how people are going to follow you if you are truly transparent.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. It's extremely important because we do talk a lot about, whether you're, soft skills and vulnerability and things, whatever. But in the end, people, they focus on the action, like what was actually done, what is being done in the company, essentially. And
Yeah,
that's something that you can't trick people on this because they know whether they admit it to you or not. These are side conversations, whether they're having a coffee with a colleague or things, whatever. It comes out, and it's something that even if, and that's why it's important when you share the failures, when you recognize that we're not Coca-Cola. Like, this is something that we just started off as an idea. We're trying to create something, and acknowledging those obstacles that you have, whatever, but also proactively maybe looking for solution as well. And I think what you're saying is it's extremely important to actually share that because it creates a sense of community and it helps drive your own mission and cultivate your own values within
yeah,
that community.
yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, let's transition into emotional intelligence.
Oh, yeah. Uh, yeah, I think one of my favorite topics. Emotional intelligence, I think, is the fundamental of a lot of things like empathy, um, even trust, even putting yourself in other shoes and understand their way of thinking. And fortunately or unfortunately, personally, I've met a lot of people without emotional intelligence, my opinion. And especially if you're a founder, you really want to have a happy, to build a happy team, happy employees, high performance team. You should give feedback, and also you should have one-to-ones with your team, every month. And feedback is like both positive and negative, right? But in order to give feedback and in order to have one-to-ones with your team, you should have emotional intelligence, meaning that you cannot give feedback to your team with the same way to everyone. Every person is different. You know, there are two ways of, actually, there are two results of giving feedback. The one is like act, the second is paralyze. So understand, how the other person really thinks, acts, reacts to something, behaves, and give feedback based on this. Yeah, you don't have to give feedback to Mark, Yanis, with the same way. Probably, yeah, if you told me, let's say, for example, you did this wrong, and you ask me why did you do that? Probably I'm fine with that, and I'm going to act. But probably Mark is going to be paralyzed. Say,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, you know, what I supposed to do. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So just understand, cultivate your emotional intelligence, add games in your daily lives, or work out more, spend more time in nature, or, facilitate uh, some playful activities inside your company. Yeah, or just let your kid inside you be out again. Everyone has a
Yes.
kid. Everyone
Yeah.
has a kid inside.
Yeah.
Just leave it out for, let's say, 1 hour per day, and let it play. It's really useful. It's really useful. This is emotional intelligence.
Exactly. It's releasing the inner child in some way. And sometimes we forget about the importance of play, the importance of having fun. That's where essentially, the creativity doesn't occur like in this vacuum, in this box essentially. It's through that freedom in a way, a sense of flow or whatever, and that's obtained through play in some way. So I to be intentional, I think that's extremely
Yeah,
useful because when we talk about emotional intelligence, if you ask 100 people in a line, what is emotional intelligence? You'll get 100 different answers. So
true.
sometimes it's important that we're throwing around these words essentially, and we're expecting people to understand what they mean. And so, especially when you're an adult, you don't. Unfortunately, we're less inclined to say, "I don't know what that means. I don't know," because you don't want to feel stupid or you don't want to feel whatever. But it's like maybe instead of just throwing out and saying we need to be emotionally intelligent, it's like, well, this is what emotional intelligence is for me. Imagine if now these 100 people not the importance of what it is, but what it is for them, and perhaps giving a practical example of, working with my colleague, I consider this an example of emotional intelligence. People, we connect through stories. And I think
Yeah,
this could be a great way to maybe even facilitate, emotional intelligence through, because we're more inclined to remember the story instead of a definition. You understand what
yeah,
I mean?
true. True. Yeah, that's true. Storytelling is a superpower because, like, it's
Exactly.
it's easily memorable. Every time, every time.
Exactly. Okay. All right. This is going to take us to our. We'll transition into self-awareness.
Oh, yeah. Aha moments, as you said before. Those are aha moments. Yeah. I love those moments. I love those moments, especially my clients, because, like, when you are, let's say, a coach, or or if you are not a coach. It's like discussing with someone else, and you don't need to drive or to advise the other person or to give a suggestion or something. Sometimes it's really important to just listen actively. You know, just cultivate active listening.
Hmm.
It's like it's a superpower. You don't have to give solutions to everything and to everyone. So yeah, just the next time that someone is going to give you a lot of advice, is just say, I don't want to pay that much this month to this invoice, and it's yeah, just listen and ask some tough questions. Just that. This is self-awareness for me. Listen, actively listening, and ask tough questions that bring self-awareness and
Hmm.
those aha moments.
Yes, 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 yes. I think we all live for aha moments. We love them because it's like a cocktail of the creativity, curiosity in a way, and it's kind of it's that sweet spot when they kind of like come together in a way, and you're like, oh, I
Yeah,
see. I can see clearly now. The rain is gone. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like it's those moments that we look for. And again, with the active listening, a lot of times this is people consider this. They see this in different ways. From my own personal experience, it's extremely important because through active listening, which is essentially tuning in to this person, what they're saying, verbal, nonverbal communication, but now also being able through question formation, because this is extremely important based on what I'm hearing. Maybe in some cases this has to slightly be repeated back to the person. It's like, okay, from what you're saying, blah blah blah, and then formulate a question outside of that. I think it can be extremely proactive
yeah,
in this way because sometimes we assume people in communication, and this is something that we have to realize, communication passes through multiple filters. So what I'm saying to you is not exactly what you're receiving because you're a person with your own beliefs, with your own biases, with your own interpretations. So
yeah,
it's important sometimes to say, okay, this is what you said. This is how I interpret it. Is this right? Not right? Or whatever. And then from that, now you can generate questions. It's
yeah,
like we're
yeah,
on the same page more or less. I can't just assume like, well, why did they do this? I said this because they didn't interpret it this way. they
yeah,
interpret it in a different way. So yeah.
yeah. Just reflect the other person's words. Yeah, just say that again. When we speak loudly and we listen
Hmm.
ourselves, we realize a lot of things
Yeah.
that probably yes, or just write them down. If you don't want to speak to someone unless you're a really introvert or shy, whatever it is, write your thoughts in a piece of paper and and
Exactly.
read, and read them again and again.
Okay. Definitely. 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 Let's transition into teamwork. We're talking about people.
Yeah, teamwork. Yeah, nice. Yeah, again, I would say just add playful activity inside your company,
Hmm.
especially in the beginning of being a startup. You really want to have a team, work together, because as we said before, we have a lot of generalists in the beginning in a startup. So you cannot have, let's say, 20 people or 30 people from the day first, but you have probably five, and they have to do a lot of different things inside the company. So yeah, just enhance the teamwork activities inside and outside of the office or in a remote environment. It's really important. Uh, you know, uh, just go outside for a dinner, or just stay at the office after work, or another day, and just play something all together, board game. It
Hmm.
doesn't have to be, let's say, PlayStation or something. You know, yeah, just a board game or talk, or just
Yeah.
informal discussion. Or in a
Yes.
remote environment, just schedule every 6 months a company trip.
Hmm.
This is part of teamwork. And everyone should add his own stone inside this schedule of trip. Inside this
Hmm.
schedule of the board game. Let's decide all together. Share responsibilities. Even in
Yes.
that, this is teamwork.
Exactly, exactly. And this like talking and transitioning into our next topic is connected with this is, we're talking about trust essentially. And trust is, how they say like it takes a long time to build it and it takes a few seconds to destroy it, you know? So it's something that you have to through this playfulness or through this essentially where people get to know connections are built with having a coffee with your colleague, playing a game or whatever, not necessarily talking about the KPIs in a meeting, you know what I mean? So this is where you cultivate these interactions to actually get to know the person. Maybe, oh, you found out that they have a child, or they actually, I don't know, they play the guitar and they had a performance last night, or things or whatever. It's these, let's say, micro interactions or sometimes even macro, that kind of like facilitate this trust in a way, because as humans, we're designed to have a high level of alertness in a way. And we're
Yeah,
essentially constantly trying to detect, is this a safe environment? If I'm, because the basis are the of our brains, it's the survival mechanism in a way. Is there danger around the corner, etc.? So we transfer this, although we don't have to look for if there's a lion in general around the corner when I turn. This turns into, okay, this person, this story we start to create in our head about little information that we have because we don't have time to go in detail. I see you, I hear what you said. I'm looking at your nonverbal communication, subconscious, conscious, unconscious. You understand what I mean? And all of this comes together in, sometimes in an unfair way, a formulated opinion that we have of a person. And this
yeah,
is why it's important to facilitate spaces, environments where you can kind of penetrate that in a way and get past that and say, "Oh, I didn't know that." That's an aha moment, essentially. To say,
yeah.
I play the guitar too. Like, I totally didn't know. I didn't know that." And that's how you're kind of like bridging those gaps in a way. So I'm on board with what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And because you mentioned about the KPIs, I hear from a lot of companies, are really interested about key performance indicators and the company. So how to measure my company, my people's performance, etc. I recently read about the new definition of KPIs is like keep people informed, involved, interested, and inspired. So there are not KPIs anymore. Just keep your people with those four words, and you're fine.
Great, great. That's why I love these conversations, because language is a tool. We use it in sort of kind of like this map to help us navigate in a way. So when you create, for example, okay, this is KPI, this is emotional intelligence, or whatever. Language, as many things, it has to evolve in a way, and these meanings evolve. And I think that's a great, it's a great nugget. Essentially, is it's it's this people centric thing. People many times they give like the example, regardless if you like or dislike, and they talk about the Amazon example of people can critique it, but most people have had a great user or customer experience with them, and maybe doing a one click and receiving something or whatever. If we think about this framework and saying that we're centered on, or we're focused on our employees, on their, I don't know, continuous learning, on their journey in some way, because although in the Fluent Reads community, we're talking about, okay, we're empowering founders and things, whatever, but this is systemic. The empowerment is not focused on one or two people. It's for the entire team, because
Yeah,
essentially it's gradual. Everybody is elevated through that or whatever. So I think it's important. I love the value that you're adding right now, because it's giving us more of that bird's eye view to essentially say, okay, let's step back. We're like too focused. We're too microscopic right now. Let's step back and not forget that we're people interacting with other people.
we are. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Exactly. Okay. Let's go into self-motivation.
Self motivation. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. From the founder's perspective, it's really important to be motivated. So to have your team motivated as well, right? So if If it's really obvious that you're not motivated, how are you going to motivate others? And yeah, while when you chose to be a founder, I think the most important stuff was like you had passion about that. You had a passion about a specific field. You probably were obsessed with that or something, and you really want to grow. You really want to make an impact in this world, or you really, yeah, to make money. Obviously, let's not hide between our fingers. This is a mission as well. Um, but it's really important to not lose yourself inside this journey, because it's a journey. Entrepreneurship is a journey again. So don't lose yourself. Let's say celebrate every single moment
Hmm.
that you have achieved. Understand, admit your failures, and share it with your team, because that shows that you're vulnerable, and it's really important to show your vulnerability, because it's not, let's say, a sign of weakness. It's like a superpower. When you show to others that you're really vulnerable and you make mistakes, make failures, you really enhance their way to make failures, to fail in general. So yeah, this is the self motivation in general, I think. So just find your obsession. Probably it's not the correct word. Just find your passion.
Hmm.
uh, just and enjoy every single step inside this journey. Enjoy it and ask yourself. I used to ask to myself every Sunday three main questions. Let's say this is: Am I still passionate about what I'm doing? Yes. Let's go to the next one. You know, are you still curious to learn, to investigate, to explore the next path of this journey? Yes. Tick. Go to the next one. And what can you change in order to make this journey more, happiness, with more happiness, and just think. Let your mind thinks about, what have you done better, or what could could have you changed, or something like that. Just improve your whole journey. This is it.
Exactly, exactly. I love. I like those two questions. Actually, I want to incorporate that in my own life, because many times it's important to create frameworks, to create models, essentially to simplify and to quiet the noise in a way, because we have many thoughts that go through our head on a day or whatever. We're going back and forth, and it's important to kind of have what I'm getting from you is kind of like some foundational principles, some foundational questions. Like, okay, am I still connected to this? Let's start with that. And if
Yeah,
we can get past that, okay, question two. If we can't get past that, then now we need to open up a new line of questioning in some way. So I think it's a great way to simplify, and when you're on different steps in your journey. Thank you for providing that, because it's quite useful. We're constantly asking ourselves different questions or whatever, and many of which that are probably not even maybe even useful or fruitful at the moment, because we don't have a system in place, or a certain line of questioning in order to optimize getting an answer to that in some way. So I think that's great and
yeah,
useful.
yeah. You should definitely, launch systems while being a founder. Just systems is your whole company.
Exactly. It's a great way. I mean, I talked about this on another interview of like a book about systems, and sometimes it's a great way to approach different aspects of your life. When you think about how you have a system, you have micro and macro systems, and how they're interconnected in some way. So you say, okay, well, I have this startup. This is a system. Okay, we call it a company or I think whatever. But because language is a tool, let's think about it as a system. Now, what are the functioning parts of this? Okay, well, maybe you say, okay, there are different departments. In these departments, there are people, and with these people, there are different roles. But okay, so how are they interacting? How are they connecting?
Yeah,
Are there any parts that are not working well, and how are they not working? Now, although this is a systematic approach and it may sound kind of rigid, when you add the soft skills, when you add, okay, so what if I put on the hat of emotional intelligence looking at the system? What if I put on the hat of active listening and looking at the system? Now I think that's a better way to kind of optimize how we can see the system from different perspectives,
Yeah,
and just make it much more enriching, and you get more value
yeah,
out of that process.
yeah. I completely agree with the fast way. It's so powerful.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Because if this doesn't happen, transitioning to our next topic is this can lead to burnout. Now, burnout, another word used a lot or whatever. We're now in a space, relatively speaking, compared to before, where mental health is actually it's entered the lexicon more, in terms of in the corporate world and different things, whatever. But these are things that we talk about, but how they're acted upon are different, whether it's in a big organization, a small organization, and but burnout is a real thing, which can be a cause of a cocktail of lack of awareness, and frustrations, mental health, or things, whatever. There's not necessarily one specific variable. So, what comes to mind related to this burnout, burnout issue?
Yeah, yeah. First of all, it's really important to understand if you have burnout or if you want to have burnout. It's totally different, right? Because are you in a burnout mode or do you want to be in a burnout mode? Because you just read the symptoms and you realize that you have some of them, and you say, I have burnout. But yeah, how do you know it? It was like a diagnosis from your therapist or something. I was in the burnout a year ago, but this is something that my therapist told me. I didn't do an indication on myself that I have burnout. You know, so I think this is the first step. Just be sure that you have burnout, and after
Hmm.
that, ask yourself, what did I do uh, to reach me in this situation? You know, was I overwhelmed? Did I promise to myself more than I could do? Because what we tell to ourselves about ourselves in relation to our business, this is what goes to burnout, right? Don't don't let's say it's really important, to have high goals,
Hmm.
or to achieve high, in order to grow fast and fast and more. But just make sure that you celebrate the small wins before reaching this goal. If you don't celebrate anything, you know, uh, what's the satisfaction that you get from this journey? It's probably
Exactly.
nothing. Yeah, it's probably nothing.
Exactly, exactly. It's something that, and I like the way you frame this in. Am I or do I want to be?
Yeah,
Because this can be slightly, it can be dangerous and contagious in a way. When you're constantly hearing burned out, everyone's burned out. You're like, well, me too. And without even thinking about it, you accept this, you commit to this, and this is not beneficial in a way. It's not a fight to see who's more burned out or things, whatever. It's something that you want to essentially detach yourself from. So I like the way that you approach this. When we talk about founders being burned out or whatever, it's not about comparison, but there's some things that are, let's say, objective truths. When you think about someone who has, or their responsibilities are in a specific department, or they're over a few people or whatever, where essentially as a founder, there's a very high learning curve, depending on your setting. No matter what degrees you have, whatever, there's a limitation of what you can learn from formal training. A lot of it it's experiential. So burnout, essentially, that you can be more inclined to be burned out because you're like, okay, I listen to you. I'm listening to you, Giannis. You're telling me that I need to be self-aware, that I need to be emotionally intelligent, that I need to connect with my team, that I need to raise money because I need to pay them also, and then things whatever. This is a lot. This is a lot, and I'm one person, and I'm one
yeah,
person. And how do we enter this? It is self-awareness of like what can I delegate? What do I need to do on my own? Who can I outsource this to? When is it the right time to ask for help? You understand what I mean? What direction, what would you advise for this? Because it can be extremely overwhelming. And
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, I totally agree. It is. It is a lot of, it's overwhelming. But, I think the question is, did you set these questions to yourself or someone else did it to you, for you? It's like things that, yeah, it's must to be done or nice to have, let's say. Just prioritize,
yes,
what's the first step to have a sustainable company? Probably money. Of course, everybody wants money. This is the fundamental. Just, to improve your products, to build your products, pay your team, pay yourself, uh, and after that, just prioritize with baby steps. You don't have to grow like crazy. It's not, yeah, it's not normal. Let's say,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. I
yeah,
love your yes, I love your strategic thinking and question formation because throughout this interview, throughout this conversation, this chat, many times you brought up, okay, let's start with this question, and it's important because it sounds simple, but we have to actually analyze this from a broad standpoint, but also individually. Is what is the story I'm telling myself? And this is extremely important because when you say, "What do you think?" or "What should be done?" or whatever, like, no, no, no. What is the story you're telling yourself? Because what it does is it allows you to maybe separate and analyze, is this an objective truth or is this coming from my own subjective psychological drama that I'm creating about something? So this distinction is extremely important. Is maybe I like your approach with the question is, what is the story I'm telling myself about the situation? And I think this is critical when it's like, oh, I'm telling myself that maybe I'm burned out or whatever. So how did I get here? Or whatever. So you're not necessarily saying I am burned out or whatever. It's like, no, we're doing an exploration through a story that's that's on autopilot right now, essentially in my head. It's going over and over again. It doesn't
yeah,
necessarily mean that this is who I am. Maybe it's something that I'm experiencing. And this is the powerful thing in language because depending on the language you speak, like it may sound like a silly thing, but in the English language, we have, the verb to be. In Spanish, I speak Spanish, they have two forms, or in French or in Italian, where you have to be where it's more permanent, and you have a to be form where it's not permanent, it can change. And that's extremely powerful in language because in English, when you just say, I am stressed and I am things, there's a certain permanence there that you shouldn't necessarily connect to. And I think it's really important when you frame it in a way of like, what's the story I'm telling myself? Oh, I'm telling myself that I'm burned out. Why? Because everyone around me says they're burned out.
no,
Where's the input? It's another thing we have to explore is like, where's my attention? Where am I focused on? Typically what we focus a lot on tends to manifest in very interesting ways. Whether you can for it to be positive or negative, it's up for you to decide. But if I'm constantly focused on stress and everyone's around me stressed and everyone's talking about it and everyone's talking about what's the story I'm going to tell myself? What's the output? Well, I'm probably going to say, well, everything's chaotic. I'm stressed. Everyone else is stressed. And as a result, we normalize this and it's like, oh, it's okay. No one's crazy if everyone's crazy. You know what I mean?
yeah, and same with stress, burnout, and business.
Hmm.
Those three words are really connected to each other because every founder says, "I'm busy, I'm stressed, I'm burnout." Yeah, okay, but what does business mean to you? What does stress mean to you? And the burnout. I think it's like another story because like it seems to be like a trend. It's like a ChatGPT and the burnout. It's like we're talking about trends, and everybody. I feel that everybody wants to be in a burnout mode. That they want
It's
to
a
be. I don't know why.
competition.
Yeah, exactly. It's a competition. Let's say I'm in burnout level 5. Oh, I won. I'm
I'm
in number
7.
7. Yeah, I'm 7. Yeah, you know. Yeah, so yeah, you don't have to be in a burnout mode to succeed, or you don't have to be stressed all the time to succeed as a founder or as a leader. You know, it's or like quotes like play hard, work hard. You know, they don't exist. You know, just work smarter, not harder. That's it.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. You bring up a good point because it's really easy. We don't think about it, and I know I focused on we're talking about this, but I always try to emphasize the power of language, and we need to be careful the words we use. Our word choice is extremely important, and because everyone says they're busy, this becomes a competition of how busy you are. We have to reframe this and say, what am I prioritizing? And why am I prioritizing it? Because
Yeah,
if you systematically write down everything you do in a day and you actually put a time on this, there's an extreme amount of clarity that is given. And the thing is, if you want to challenge yourself more, share it with someone else. You're so busy, share the busyness with me. Show me how many time you're allocating to doing this and how much time and this and if you feel uncomfortable sharing this, this is giving you a very obvious answer about the priorities that you're choosing.
yeah, exactly. And this is the power of words, as you said. You know, just if you really want, for example, to cultivate a positive mindset, just remove your from your language words like cope. You know, replace cope with manage. You know, manage has a positive attitude. Cope is like I cannot do that. Yeah, manage is like I manage it. You know, I
Exactly,
can do that.
exactly,
You know,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
it's
In many cases, when I've explored like language optimization or whatever with people in training and communication, because I focus on patterns in terms of like what's their lexicon, what words are they using often, and are these words conducive to where they want to go? And I found an issue with problem. Everyone had a problem, and there became a competition of the degree of their problem. I said, well, if we reframe that to obstacle, now we both know what problems and obstacles are, but which one in terms of your perception, because I know they can depend on their culture, their language, or whatever, which one do you perceive as a way of overcoming faster? And it usually is obstacle instead of problem, because a problem sometimes there's kind of like this permanence metathesis that occurs where it's like it's just there, it's stuck. Whereas like obstacles could be temporary in some sense. Like I have this, and even to emphasize, like, is this a small obstacle, a medium size, or a large one? It
yeah,
sounds trivial, it sounds silly, but if you actually tell yourself, well, actually, compared to the obstacle I had last week, this is nothing. Okay, now your self awareness has increased. So now, if you attempt to complain, if you think whatever, we're just going to go back to something you said that, comparatively speaking, this is trivial compared to the other problem. So why are we giving the same attention to this as if it were the other one? And it requires more time because our brains are designed to optimize energy in some ways. And in conversation we want to be short and concise, but sometimes it's important to take an extra few seconds, an extra minute to say, let's go a bit deeper here. What is this
yeah,
problem exactly that you have? Can we use language to kind of like shift that to something else? And now that we have a new word, let's cut it up into three parts. And now let's compare this to one from a previous way and then do a comparative analysis or whatever. Now let's go back to your prioritization. Let's just remove that you're busy because everyone has things to do in life. What are you prioritizing and are you able to carry those out? And I think it's extremely important. This is why I agree with you saying that not only the coaching, the mentorship or whatever, but in the end, one person is receiving all of this input. So that's
yeah,
why the self-awareness, the ability to go from collecting the dots to connecting the dots is extremely important, where sometimes we obsess over collecting dots where, okay, I'm reading this, I'm doing this course, I had this coach. Okay, let's stop for a moment. How are you connecting all of how are you connecting all of this?
exactly. You know, I usually address it like the four words formula. It's like what do I want? It's like two words, four words, so powerful. You know, ask this to yourself. You know,
Yeah,
what do I want? Blah blah. To achieve with that. You know, to
exactly,
manage,
exactly,
to over,
exactly.
blah blah.
Exactly. Yes. How
That's
what
it.
do I because our minds, our brains are designed to go to work. It's like this brings me to kind of like a book chat that we were talking about, and they were talking about when this question formation, when you say, what do I want? And then you can say, how am I going to get it? And then the author actually added, how can I get it effortlessly? Now you're
Yeah,
adding this adverb there because now the mind has to go to work more, because you're not just saying, how can I get it? How can I get it effortlessly? So now there's a simplification, there's an optimization that you're
yeah,
asking. And this is a kind of like this is quite complex, but this is how you come to those aha moments. Maybe if you're in the shower or whatever, I got it. This is how I'm going to do it. Tomorrow, when I go to my team, I'm going to. But you have to make the conscious effort sometimes to kind of like, I think we underestimate the power of this, the supercomputer we have
yeah,
between our ears. If you, like, we're talking about chat GDP, if you prompt it, it's like prompt engineering. If you prompt it the right way, you can get better results or better answers in many ways. But it's kind of like we don't receive the user manual, in many cases. So this is
yeah,
why it's important to, whether it's reading or getting coaching or connecting, whatever, to kind of get these dots so that you can later connect them in your own personalized way. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I totally
Okay.
agree.
Communication is important. And there are many aspects when you're talking, whether it's in your native language or in another language. We're going to go into public speaking. Now, when we think about public speaking, a common example is, we see these TED Talks and we think about inspiration, we think of whatever. And, many people don't know that people, they train for weeks many times to, to actually give these talks. There's books written on it, intonation and things or whatever. So sometimes we can be our own worst enemy, meaning that it's impossible for me to do that, what I'm seeing on the stage or whatever, without actually maybe reframing that and say, okay, that's a goal, that's where I want to go, but incrementally, this is the plan, whether it's 1% or whatever, how can get there? And the first thing is maybe taking out my phone and recording myself and posting it on TikTok or YouTube or something, because I'm
Yeah,
cultivating what I need to actually start speaking. So public speaking, how would you approach this?
yeah, yeah. Man, I think there's a myth around public speaking, like extroverts are better in public speaking than the introverts. I
Okay.
tend to disagree with that because the main difference between those people is like introverts usually are much more well prepared while when they're going to speak in public. You know, extroverts they really they say, "Oh, I have it, I got it." I'm an extrovert person. I can talk for x minutes,
Yes.
without taking a breath or something. But I think the public speaking is exactly what you said. Just prepare your speech, record yourself, listen to yourself, and just adjust the moments where you feel that the attention
Hmm.
is not there. Attention is the new oil, right? Everybody wants people's attention on social media and
Hmm.
road, everywhere.
Yes.
So just and add a lot of storytelling in your public speaking. It's really important. I think we've seen that in a lot of TED talks. I've
Hmm.
said everyone starts with something. It's like a joke, a question, or something, and cuts people's attention. And until the end, they haven't replied to this question. You know, so it's about storytelling.
Yes.
Keep people's attention, record yourself and listen to yourself. And if you cannot listen to yourself, give it to someone else. Girlfriend, spouse, boyfriend, friend, whatever, brother,
Yeah.
sister,
Yeah.
parents,
Yes.
to everyone, and get feedback. It's,
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah,
It's important to measure yourself, and obviously there is humans in many cases we're constantly comparing ourselves. So I've come across this working with clients in different ways where you say, oh well, at my job this person like they're a better presenter, or this person or whatever. So we can't deny that you're constantly scanning the environment and making comparison in many ways. But also it's kind of recognizing that, like, it's kind of when you're going deeper, say, okay, fixed variables. Hypothetically speaking, there'll always be someone who's a better presenter, who speaks more effectively. I think, okay, that's a given or whatever. But in my own personal way, how can I measure my own growth here? Like last week, compared to last month, compared to last year. And this is why it's important with the audios or even the videos, because anytime the voice starts to chatter and say you're not good enough or things, whatever, you have something tangible that you can go back and say, oh, well, I'm much better than I was a year ago. And then the voice has to silence itself. So this
Yeah.
is why it's really important to record something that you can actually go back to in order to silence that voice in a way, and just recognize that it's not about reaching the light at the end of the tunnel or at the peak of the mountain. It's that you're able to measure your own improvement in certain ways. And that can be applied in public speaking, but even when you think about talk about languages, a lot of people measure like, okay, do I have the B2 level? Do I have C1? Do I have C2? And it's like, this is completely subjective, because first I need to know what's the story you're telling yourself, because
Agree.
that's much more important than anything I can tell you. I can give you 20 exams, I can give you speaking or things, and that has nothing that compares, that has little weight to the story you're telling yourself. So once I know the story you're telling yourself, whether it's comparing yourself to the colleagues or there are things, whatever, now we have kind of like a foundation that we can work on or whatever. The first advice would be to remove the B2 and the C1 essentially. Are you able to communicate in the way are you able to transmit your message? Because in many cases when we think about whether it's producing something from a creative work or things, whatever, we're so, because it's coming from us and we have to be vulnerable in doing it, we're constantly thinking about in a meticulous way this and that. In many cases, instead of thinking about, did I get a preposition correct, or did I make a transition or things, whatever, did you provide value? Did you communicate your message to the audience and you were able to give something? Because I promise they're not going to go home and say, did you hear that preposition they messed up on? Did you did you hear that? So it's kind of like, did you get value? Which kind of brings us back to that example of like the quintessential TED talk of like the inspiration of things, whatever. People don't remember what you said. This is like a quote. The people remember what you said, what you did. They remember how you made them feel. So
Exactly.
if I remember that, wow, I remember the sensation I had after you spoke to me. That's something I'm always going to remember. And the next time I see you, even if it's 10 years from now, that memory has been locked there. I'm not going to remember how you said it or what you said or how you started the speech. I'm just going to remember that emotional connection that we made. And I think it's something that we have to highlight. And it's a easy way to kind of like dissolve all of the other chatter, all of the other noise of transitions and optimization and did I speak perfectly and things, whatever. So it's we create a lot of self-imposed obstacles for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of, yeah, major.
Okay, definitely. We have a couple more. I want to transition into, before we get to our last couple of topics, which I think is extremely important. We talk about it, and we touched on this a little bit, but I want to put an official title over it, is vulnerability in the workplace. Because this is another thing where you have to talk about what it means for me. We could say, "Oh, let's be vulnerable," but I remember watching a video on a video. It was a TED video. I think the series is TED at the Workplace or something like this, and she talked about selective vulnerability. Now we're adding an adjective, but it's extremely important. Selective vulnerability. Vulnerability is not necessarily broadcasting everything that happened to you. Yeah, this morning my kid was like, "No, this is not necessarily the vulnerability." Being selective, intentional, and saying, "Okay, this is what happened." And I'm not saying that there's one way to do it, but there maybe has to be some criteria in exploring this. So if you could speak a little bit on the criteria or some fundamentals from your perspective of how can vulnerability in the workplace be cultivated or explored in some way, that would be extremely useful.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's like, yeah, as we said before, it's like a superpower for me. It's not like, let's say, a sign of I'm weak, I'm not strong enough to have this position, this title, or something. So yeah, it's so important to show to others not that you're vulnerable, but you are human. You know,
Mhm.
you can fail, you can make mistakes. You need a hug. You you need some love. It's so important to
Yes,
to to
yes.
to admit it first to yourself,
Hmm.
and after that to express it. I think both are so tough. First, you have to admit it, to accept it, that here I need help, for example. And after that, the second tough part is to say, to express it to someone else. Something, Mark, I need help with this. I'm not that good enough, or at yeah, as I should have been, or something. Yeah, but it's okay. Just ask for help. Be vulnerable. You know?
Exactly, exactly. This is and many times they talk about, in the startup context where it's like a top down approach. You understand what I mean? So it's if the people at the top, if the founders essentially, if they're not exploring this, we can't expect the culture or the other people in the organization to explore this as well. So what is your take on the founder? And we talked a little bit about this of recognizing I made a mistake. Uh, I recognize this. This is how I'm navigating through the space. This is how I improved it or whatever. How important is it in the role of the founder, in your opinion, to promote this? Because if they're not receptive to it or anything, how can we expect other people in the team to feel comfortable being vulnerable in the workplace?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's again, it's so important to say I made a mistake. To take the responsibility of that, and not to give blames. You know, to your team. It's yeah, it's the fundamental of leadership, I would say. Just take responsibilities, take the blames, and just share the credits.
Mhm.
You don't need the credits if you are a founder. Yeah, you have, let's say, 10 people and one baby just born. Your company. Just take care of them. It's that's it. Just be a human, take care of them, and they will take care of you. It's
Yes.
it's
Yes.
it's contagious. It's like kindness. It costs $0. To give trust, to show trust, and to be human.
Exactly. Exactly. You just brought an idea to my mind because I was talking about this in another interview, and we are talking about the importance of language and how companies shouldn't, uh, you know, we throw around this word, we're a family, and you have some backlash with this where it's like, well, you don't fire your family member. So we're talking about family, we're not necessarily a family. And we say, well, let's think about it as like a sports team where everyone's trying to optimize their performance. In the end, instead of like separating this or creating these extremes of the spectrum, what you've allowed me to think about is it's kind of like we were talking about connecting the dots. There's a maybe a holistic or an eclectic approach, meaning like maybe you should take some aspects from a parenting point of view, meaning like you said, the baby, like if I'm a new parent and this is my child, I'm not going to say, oh, it's really not important that I hug them, or it's not. Yeah, no, you're not gonna, unless you're a terrible parent. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not really important if I show emotion or anything like that. So I think it's a framework that you can use. It's not to say that, oh, I'm the parent, micromanage or things like it's like, no. What if I incorporate some aspects of parenting just to give me a simple framework to say, that helps cultivate vulnerability, sensitivity to different situations. And then I'm going to transition into, okay, now I'm a coach of a sports team, meaning that we have to perform in a certain way. And I think it's going, I guess, mentally back and forth on that spectrum. I think it would be really useful in some ways of not taking things at face value of say, I'm the parent, I'm the coach. It's, well, maybe this requires a little parenting, this requires a little
Yeah,
coaching, and
yeah,
maybe other things in between.
yeah. Exactly, exactly. It's not like, say, one way. It's like I've heard a lot of founders say, I don't want to be friends with my employees. Uh, yeah, if you don't want, you don't have to, But uh, would you ever consider to fire one of your children if they did a mistake? Probably not, So how do you decide to fire one of your employees because they did a mistake without even offering them a training and consultant, coaching, mentoring, or nothing, just because they did a mistake or just because they are not as high performer
Hmm.
as they should have been, for example,
Hmm.
you know?
Yes. Yes. It's a delicate thing. I've heard many. Obviously, there's the like there are different ways of approaching this. I've heard a wide range of things. Of sometimes you have to, and this is part of like self awareness, and even thinking about the company as a system. Sometimes you have a situation where the person is not the right fit, and I've even heard a founder say, we had a conversation about this or whatever, to first admit it, that you're not right for this, but I'm willing to write you a recommendation for another place. I mean, and I think that's an extra added value in a way of saying that sometimes you do have scenarios, maybe it's not a course away from you optimizing, or maybe it's not whatever. And you have those, as you said, those difficult conversations. Sometimes you're in a situation where this is uncomfortable. I don't want to do it. I don't want to have this conversation, but you need to have it.
Yeah,
And in order to explore that space and say, you're not a right fit here, but I imagine you're probably a right fit some other way. So I'm going to help facilitate that in some way. And what you do is, and this brings me to like another podcast I heard, is sometimes when you're in the position of firing someone, you don't realize the impact you create, the story you contribute to that person's psychology.
yeah,
Because if you don't, humans, this is how we typically work, even though we work in many ways, but if you don't provide the factual information, you now force us to create it. So, meaning that if you just say you're not a right fit, you have to go, without actually talking about here's the journey, this is where they're not compatible, now you're releasing this person without any information, without anything else, and now they have to create it, which can even sometimes even be traumatizing in some way. So I think that's the way where like coach parent in some way of like, as your child, would you just say, you're worthless? Like you did that. Like, no, you, you wouldn't say like, let's talk a little bit about this or whatever. You shouldn't have done this. And I think this is a great way to, yeah, to think about it. Again, we can talk about this from a philosophical point of view, from this idea theoretical point of view, but later you do have the application. What I think is useful, not only for our conversation, but for the Fluent Roots for community, is take everything with a grain of salt. This is a very important idiom, meaning that all of this is said, books are written on it, podcasts or whatever. But the important part of you as your journey, your lifelong journey as a founder, as a human, essentially, you're coming across different situations, uh, different opportunities to learn in a way. And eventually you're going to have to pick and choose in any stage of your life. So to hear this is not to say, oh, tomorrow I need to be a parent, tomorrow I need to be a coach. I think it's important to say this fragment is probably applicable in this situation tomorrow because this is where I'm at. At my level of growth or in my journey, I'm here right now. And I think that's transformative to have that awareness to say I'm here right now, but also recognizing that where I want to go is extremely far away from me, and that's why I may need a coach or I may need someone else, but this is the best decision I can make right now. And it goes back to what you were saying before of like, ask the right questions,
yes,
ask the right questions. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Our last topic before we finish will be because this is the first time we actually have someone who's you did a master on the topic, artificial intelligence. When we look back in history, we'll or experience equivalent to we're living through the AI revolution, equivalent to maybe like the internet in the early 90s in some way. There's a lot of information, maybe misinformation out of there. You have experts, you have non-experts, you have a lot of AI companies being created. What do you want to say about the buzz, the AI buzz?
Yeah, yeah. Let's say I don't know if you heard it, but Elon Musk has said that, let's say, we live in a simulation.
Hmm.
I don't know. Nobody knows, of course. I think we never learned it. Yeah, it's a buzzword, as you said. It's a trend with all the fundamentals, let's say, and all the elements like ChatGPT. Everybody wants to be in this field, let's say, from economics, math, engineering, physics. There are a lot of things, and you know, it's applicable to everywhere. I think it can be applied to any field, to every field, and if we use it wisely, it can automate a lot of processes. It can because I've heard from a lot of people they are going to replace a lot of human jobs, blah blah. Yeah, it is, but from our own good, and if you really refuse to adapt to a new situation, way of living, this is not their problem. It's your problem. It's a revolution in general. And yeah, if you ask me if I am afraid about the AI, I don't afraid about the AI. I'm afraid of people who use AI. So yeah, if we use it wisely, it would be, let's say, a great revolution in every field, every single field. You know, uh, we'll see. I
Okay.
think the next 20, 30 years will be really, really important
Yes,
in this field,
I
and
agree with you.
it's like really, really gradually. The revolution is like gradually speaking. Yeah,
Exactly. I agree with you totally. It's not, and this is, you can apply it to social media, you can apply it to any technological advance. It's not the technology in itself, it's the use. And who's using it? Well, the people behind it. And I think that's an important way to kind of simplify all of the noise about it is the application, the use. And maybe that because that can be quite volatile in some way, there has to be some sort of regulation or legislation regarding that. So yeah, I think that's a thank you for giving your insights with that. So thank you very much, Yanis, for this for providing a lot of value and exploring these different topics for startup founders, but also for people in general, because we not only talked about KPIs as we were talking, we talked about the human experience in many ways. So just bringing this to a close, there's a lot you can say or whatever, but what's one suggestion or a couple suggestions or one piece of advice, especially from your experience as a coach, helping founders or facilitating the process to help them navigate the world as a startup founder? What's a piece of advice? You know how when they say, if you could write one thing on a board that everyone could see in the world, or in now in this digital age, if you could write one post that everyone could read, what is something that you would just say to startup founders to
yeah,
for them to keep in mind?
yeah. I think I would be quite simple. Let's say the first one, be human. The second one is like don't lose yourself in this amazing, amazing journey. You chose this journey, not someone else was chosen that for you. So it's such a rewarding role, and you have to keep it. Let's say, and because you decide to do that. And the last one is like your people and your employees are the most valuable asset of your company. Don't forget about them. That's all.
Simplistic and profound. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Yanis,
It's my
for
it's my
your
pleasure. It's my
for your
pleasure.
collaboration to
I
the
really
FluentReads
really
community.
enjoy that, and yeah, it's my total pleasure. I'm really happy that you sent me that DM, on LinkedIn, and now we did that beautiful discussion.
Exactly, exactly. And this is kind of like out to other people, like where some of these interviews I do know, the person previously or through a mutual friend, but other cases I have to send a DM. And it's like sometimes on the founder journey when you're like out to invest or the things, whatever, people are gonna say no, people are not gonna respond, people are whatever, but shoot for the yes because you always have no in life. That's like my philosophy where like if I send 10, I can't be really disappointed. But if I said 100, or if I said something, there's probably 10% that'll say yes and the things or whatever. So I'm glad we had this conversation as well, because we couldn't have predicted this. You understand what I mean? It's kind of like, and
Yeah,
that's one of those things. That's the great thing about just connecting and collaborating and chatting. So thank you very much, Giannis, for your contribution and value you provided to the Fluent
yeah.
Reads community.
Thank you very much from my side as well. And yeah, it was my total pleasure. So